Right on the dawn of April 1st, 2022, with the release of the new Red Hot Chili Peppers album, their 12th, Unlimited Love. I kind of wanted to go into a little bit of my history with the band, how I first heard of them, and how I got along with the ride, why they've become my favorite band. So it really started, I think the first time I heard about the Red Hot Chili Peppers was in the very late 80s or early 90s, probably Mother's Milk era, when there was a little blurb in Entertainment Weekly. And I remember hearing about the bands back in the day. I don't remember anything about them, but just the feeling they were always around. I knew of their essence. That time in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of those alternative bands were on the verge of breaking through. I think it really started with Love and Rockets and The Cure in like the late 80s. And then, of course, Jane's Addiction and the Pixies and that first wave of alternative music. And then the Seattle bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. And the Chili Peppers were also part of that, along with Smashing Pumpkins and various other acts that got very big in the early 90s and were pretty big throughout the first part of that decade. So I always felt the essence of the Chili Peppers around, and they were always touring. They were around L'Amour's in Brooklyn, in the New York market where I'm from. So they are Roselands or Irving Plaza. So they were always around. But when I first actually heard their music was after Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out. And at that point, John Frusciante had already left the band, but their videos were just all over MTV. They were these crazy guys just jumping around and playing this very colorful music. I love heavy music. I love metal. I grew up with a lot of heavy metal, but their music was bright, colorful, and but also explosive, and it expanded. It was hard rock, but also funk. And I did grow up with a lot of 80s funk as well, whether like Ray Parker Jr. or Imagination or George Clinton or just things like that, things that were prevalent on MTV in that era. So it was cool to see this and kind of a lineage with that. And also, too, as someone who's kind of a misfit and an outcast, it was cool to see these guys wear like sports jerseys or sports logos and furry pants, and they all looked very unique and different too. I mean, I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a diehard Rangers fan, as we've talked about many times on the Everybody in the Pool YouTube channel, and it's just cool to. It's sometimes in whether it's music or life, it's a little strange if you're into very different things. Whether it's for me, it's like Star Trek or wrestling or uh, you know music or heavy metal or something like that or sports, and just like these very different things coming together and being very like geeky about all of them. And it's cool, here's a band and they kind of embrace that, and it was like, oh cool, kind of related to that. And just seeing like hearing especially like Flea, Chad Smith, and John Frusciante, and just hearing the way they play their instruments, it was so cool to me, especially Frusciante just with that mohawk and running around and just his tone. And when I first got into the band, of course, that was when Jesse Tobias was the guitar player for a little bit. He would later go on to play in Alanis Morissette's band with the late Taylor Hawkins, rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. And then Dave Navarro came on board shortly thereafter. And I didn't know much about the Chili Peppers at the time. Obviously, Frusciante is the most famous guitarist, Hilo Slovak as well. Josh Klinghoffer did some admirable work. And but for I was a Jane's Addiction fan, and so it was okay if that dude with the mohawk isn't going to be there. Then Navarro was a good, really fun player, and he's very capable and able, as they say. So that's my history of the band, and I kind of hopped on board for the ride around that period. One Hot Minute, which I loved as an album, Californication, and so on and so forth. And I was on for the ride. And they just kind of become my favorite band over the years. I still love them. I think being older right now, I view them in a little bit of a different light, more objectively. Whereas a kid, I was definitely more of a mark, as they call it, or just everything they do is awesome. So I'm able to just because I've listened to so much music over the years and a lot of music they got me into, hear things differently. You can't argue with the fact the amount of records they've sold, and they've got thousands and thousands of kids into mute playing live instruments. And also they've probably saved lots of lives as well, because just kids who were feeling worthless and got into them and brightened their day. And that's like really special and cool. So you can say what you want to about them, whether it's as people, they haven't, they've had their issues and run-ins and things of that nature, and they always haven't been perfect citizens, and it's well documented. But hopefully, especially the last 20, 30 years, all the charity work and just people they've helped throughout. That says something. But enough of that. Let's get right into the album. So the first track is Black Summer. So this track was, I love the intro. It's very haunting. It's very melancholy. And then the verse comes in and all the pirate jig or pirate jokes are out now. The song just really didn't do anything for me. It just kind of sounded like Make Your Own Chili Pepper song from Stadium Arcadium and By the Way. It was compositionally, it's very similar to things they've done in the past. And it just didn't really interest me that much other than that intro. So no, didn't really have a high opinion of it. Moving along to Here Ever After, this is a good one. The issue I have with it is that it's very similar. It's basically Fortune Faded 2.0 or Diet Fortune Faded. Flea has a very similar bass tone to what he did. He's playing with a pick, very similar bass line to what he did on Fortune Faded. And we'll get more into Flea's tone a little bit later and some interesting thoughts I had on that in terms of music geekiness. But I liked it overall. Very simple, very basic. The chorus was something that Anthony Kiedis, a chorus melody he's done before in other tracks, and the very galloping, like gallant, almost like Charlemagnean kind of melody to it, which was all right. Nothing great. I think there was a missed opportunity here. They basically hit a single, but they could have hit a triple or a home run. Where the lyrics, when Anthony Kiedis was coming in, and at various points, they could have added synth or almost done like a Simon Le Bon, very Duran Duran new wave kind of thing in it, but they chose to make it really simple and minimalistic. So this is a decent track. It's definitely a workout track, I'll say that much. Aquatic Mouth Dance is funky as Fuck, super funky. It keeps the funk in FU or the FU in funk. This probably is the best song on the album. Super funky, super old school. This could be something off Freaky Styley or even Uplift or Californication. And just awesome. The horns were great on it. It just added so much. It had like a big band type feel. And this is a real toe tapper and pure fire. Loved it. The chorus also too was cool. It's similar to what Frusciante did on Charlie from Stadium Arcadium in 2006. And the only thing I'd say about it is they could have expanded out and gone even crazier, but they chose to keep it as I'll say a radio song, but as like a pop album format track. The first song is not the one. This is pretty much one of the most boring Chili Pepper songs of all time. It's way too ballady and just kind of bedtime music. I put it up there with The Hunter and some of the I'm With You or the I'm Beside You B-sides they did as the just least exciting Chili Peppers tracks of all time. I heard it once and I don't ever need to hear it again. Poster Child is pretty funky, but in like a more 70s or jam band, I'd say like Blues Traveler or Guster kind of sense to it. Anthony Kiedis he's super hyper on this track with going on about musical history, and the references just fly by the second. Just like, wow, he's referencing so many different albums and musicians, and it's very overwhelming. I did hear some people joke that it's kind of like the Chili Peppers version of We Didn't Start the Fire, and I would agree with that. I think this is a 3 of 5 track. It's good. It could have been great, but it just was too formulaic and really stuck to an A B type format. The ending was cool and could have been expanded as well, but they chose not to. I did like Frusciante's guitar on here. It is very much like Steely Danish, actually. Go figure. Number 6 is The Great Apes. This song just really didn't do anything for me. It's funny. I think Flea once talked about how the Police wrote some great music and Sting's a great bass player, but their music just didn't emotionally move him. This song just really didn't do anything for me. I did like the chorus, which was almost like Bad Religion in some ways, but I just really have nothing to say about this track. Forgettable in my opinion. It's Only Natural is pretty decent. The 7th track, it's funky in like a laid back, mellow kind of way. The chorus, very triad-y for all the music nerds. It's something they've done before. I could think of Warm Tape as an example. And just wasn't very explosive or dynamic. It was fine, a decent funk jam, maybe workout, maybe not, pretty slow. So moving on, She's a Lover. See, the intro to this song was very reggae-ish almost, and then it goes into a standard funk track. Nothing too special. It's good. It sounds like one of the B-sides from Buy It Away or something that could have been on Stadium Arcadium. Decent, a lot of repeat listens. I really wouldn't say there's not much substance to what he's talking about, just crooning over a woman, and yeah, that's it. These Are the Ways is interesting. I really don't like the intro. I don't like the whole mellow parts. And then it kind of becomes this punk rock going back to Bad Religion. It literally sounds like a Bad Religion song. Uh, I felt that it's similar to that track Mini Epic, that form structurally that they had, which was never released in the studio. Mini Epic, if you go back to their Live in Hyde Park 2004 album, where it starts out very classical or almost very mellow and then goes into this hardcore thing. This was less so much that, and I did the punk rock parts felt a little bit like Soundgarden. I felt it was a little disjointed, very similar to the Slayer Ice-T track from the Judgment Night soundtrack that Mummies and Main Street and I did a couple of years ago. What you thinking about? This was a good track, very solid, very a good funk one. I liked it overall, and just I liked the guitar, the kind of guitar line he had. It could have even been a little bit wetter with more effects on it, but this is a good one, workout wise, funky, and something that I would definitely listen to again. Bastards of Light, the 11th track, is a very interesting song where it has like a new wave type synthesizer type feel. The chorus almost goes country, but with one chord that's a little bit off. Cordially and structurally, it's simple, but the little demented little pieces in it made it interesting to me. I love the bridge part where Anthony Kiedis' voice is distorted and it gets a little dirty and nasty. That's the kind of stuff I like to see the Chili Peppers do, especially in these later years. Just have a little bit, be off a little bit, have things that are a little bit disjointed and just off in tracks. When it's just a standard 3 to 5 minute pop track, if that's cool and you guys know what you're doing, especially working with Rick Rubin for so long. But to me, what makes music interesting, and especially older radio music, is the fact that there are these little parts, whether it's one musician changing things up or little imperfections that make it just a little disjointed and memorable. So I like this track. This is one of my favorite ones on the album, and I think it could have been even crazier, which theme we'll get to a little bit later. White Braids and Pillow Chair, very similar to Great Apes. It just didn't do anything for me. It just kind of happened. I don't see myself listening to this one ever again. One Way Traffic was funky. The lyrics are kind of wacky about being in traffic and just living life in Los Angeles. The bass almost sounded like Les Claypool and Primus, like Flea was going very cordial. And then the ending got a little explosive where it's almost like a stop start or Anthony Kiedis singing and the band kind of holding out notes. And it ends with Flea doing a solo, which was kind of cool. So before we move on in the album, let's talk a little bit about Flea's tone, which is interesting to me and may not be to anybody who's not a music fan. Flea's tone and his bass sound have changed a lot over the last 20 years. More back in the day in the classic Chili Peppers era, he was playing a Music Man bass or something with a battery in it that's active, a very bright sounding bass that was good for slap, very trebly, that Jocko type of sound. He later switched to Modulus, which had a Flea bass, and then eventually a Fender, which I think he started playing on when he did the first Mars Volta, the Lost in the Comatorium album. And he also changed amps. I think he went to an Ampeg. He's no longer using Hartke and Gallion Kruger anymore, if I'm not mistaken. You can Google it. There's a new Flea bass player interview that came out. I'm not the crap on Flea's tone, but I think him going to a Fender in the Chili Peppers and playing a more active bass, his tone doesn't sound as bright as it used to. It sounds a little bit more metallic and just not as funky and bright for whatever reason. I'm not saying play Music Man 24/7, but him going exclusively to Fender 24/7 and the Chili Peppers has kind of hurt his tone and contributions a little bit, I think it was perfect for the Mars Volta because they were going for that 70s prog rock fusion sound, and a Fender jazz bass is perfect for that. But for Chili Peppers, and specifically for this song where he's doing a solo, it just sounds a little bit too tinny to me. For example, go back to and listen to what he did on Naked in the Rain from Blood Sugar Sex Magic, or Coffee Shop from One Hot Minute. And his bass sounded great on both those tracks. Here it was good, but just something a little off in the tone. All right, well, enough music nerding out. Next is Veronica. Not bad. It's just sounds like a B-side from Stadium Arcadium. I've literally heard that it's almost doo-woppy chord progression tone that John Frusciante has done before. And the song is all right. It ends a little strange, a little demented, which is cool, but it doesn't have enough pace and momentum to make it super memorable. Let Him Cry is probably my second or third favorite track on the album. It has a very moody, almost haunting, I call it beautiful intro that the Chili Peppers haven't done. And the verse works very well. I do like him mentioning Nirvana and Madonna, two musical acts that have been friends and associated with the band in the past. So Nirvana, various members, and Madonna goes way back with the Chili Peppers. I think it was cool. Anytime they have horns is always a plus. It adds a lot of color. The guitar solo is great. The only thing is, similar to many other tracks on this album, this was about a double or triple and could have been a home run, where it could have gone more Motown and had almost like violins or like 70s funk. Think of what the Brothers Johnson did on their cover of Strawberry Letter 23. That kind of symphonic background in it could have made it outstanding, or really like a wow moment. The Heavy Wing is the next to last track. Uh, it's funny. I heard the intro and I got super excited. Speaking of the Brothers Johnson, or like Daz Band, or any of those 70s bands, I was just, oh, cool. This is going to go total throwback, total 70s. Even very something similar to Summer Romance by Incubus from their 1998 album Science. And then they change immediately from that and go to an almost 3 days Jane's Addiction type feel, which the Chili Peppers have done a couple of times before. And then the verse came in, which was decent. And the big, I guess, sway, or the big catch to this track is John Frusciante sings the chorus, a very distorted chorus. And I've read a lot of good reviews. People say they like it. I did like it, but I feel this is too similar. This is something very similar or almost identical to what he's done on a lot of his solo stuff. That period in 2004 to 5 when he was putting out like Shadows Collide with People and Inside of Emptiness and all those albums he put out. He basically put out 5 or 6 albums in every couple of months during that period. So I've definitely heard it there before. And so while it was cool, it wasn't brand new. And then we end with Tangelo, which is essentially, it's a beautiful ballad. I like it a lot. And the only problem is, we've heard this before. This is Road Tripping 2.0, where they're going to end, Anthony Kiedis, Flea, and John Frusciante are going to end an album very ballady with a very epic type feel. I like my Chili Peppers albums to end a lot more explosive. I've actually talked to a lot of people. I think in terms of ending an album, or just throughout history, talk about music psychology, all bands usually front load their albums and have the best materials at the very front. If you don't agree with that, talk about it in the comments and argue. But one thing that makes the Chili Peppers unique and different is they've had a lot of bangers, as they call them, at the end of their albums, whether it's Johnny Kick a Hole in the Sky from Mother's Milk, before that with Organic Anti-Beatbox Band from 1987's Uplift Mofo Party Plan. I mean, a Sir Psycho Sexy, They're Red Hot combo, that's a 1-2 punch. And even something like Transcending from One Hot Minute, Venice Queen from By the Way, and Dreams of a Samurai from The Getaway, which to me is one of the best songs the Chili Peppers have ever done. And I will fight that to the finish. If you haven't heard Dreams of a Samurai, check that out. That is an amazing track, probably the best track they did of Josh Klinghoffer. But so the Chili Peppers are known for having these awesome climactic endings that kind of bring the entire project of each album together, or just being explosive and just kind of a little oomph on it. And they went simplistic here, where it almost leaves you wanting more. So this is a great track, but it's like, come on, give us something that's ended on a grand note. So that's the album in a nutshell. Ultimately, my thoughts on it. It's great that John Frusciante is back. I mean, these musicians have a magical connection, chemistry together. That being said, I have to be fair here, and I felt the album was a little too by the numbers. It was a little too predictable. There are a lot of points on it that were very. It was almost like a Mad Libs or Create Your Own Chili Peppers album. We've heard these ideas, we've heard these song arrangements, we've heard these riffs before, and so it wasn't that different. There aren't many explosive moments that make you get out of your seat and be like, "Whoa, that was awesome." When I hear Chili Peppers, I always want to hear their explosive moments. And granted, they're not the Blood Sugar Sex Magic or the One Hot Minute or the Californication by the Red Chili Peppers and album band anymore. But you still want to hear awesome moments, and there just aren't a lot in this album. There's some good tracks that you can definitely put on a workout mix and will become staples in their live set list forever. Some memorable ones, but ultimately, and maybe it's just working with Rick Rubin again. It's too by the numbers. It's too formulaic. It's too predictable. I wanted more. These are great musicians, and I want to see them expand and do different things. I would rather they take a big risk, something like Warm Tape that they did on 2002's By the Way, which I loved. A lot of people didn't, and just fall flat on their ass. And they've always added different elements, whether it's reggae, whether it's flamenco, whether it's ska on their albums. And there wasn't a lot. It was a very basic, hey, the four of us are back together for the first time in a long time. We're going to make an album. It definitely was like a diet version of Stadium, Arcadium, and By the Way. And so, with that being said, what score do I give it? I give this album a 4.5 out of 10. Is that mean? I don't know. I just said I do like some of it, but too predictable for me. And hey, look, I still love the band. It's nothing personal against them. I just have to call it like I hear it. And yeah, so actually, this is the lowest score I've ever done on one of these solo reviews. So that being said, tell me what you think about that. So I'm hoping that this will be up very soon. Let me know what you think. If you like the album, if you're indifferent, let me know also what you think of the band. If you love them, you don't anymore, you're tired of them. I know some people really liked them back in the day, but for whatever reason, they don't want to be uncool. Just acknowledge them. And other people have always liked them. Let me know what you think. And this review is dedicated to the number one Red Hot Chili Peppers fan in the world, a man known as Greasy, who will be our guest on a future episode of Everybody in the Pool. With that being said, like, subscribe, share, and thank you for listening.